Yes. Okay. We are live. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can other guys hear us? I think you can do a chat. Good morning, I hope. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear us? Yes, great. Thank you very much. Again, good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Boria. Welcome to the EarlyBirds Explorer weekly webinar. This webinar series is run by EarlyBirds team to promote disruptive leaders, especially innovators. And at this stage, our focus is on the startups and scale-ups who have at least a minimum viable product, and of course, more if required. Take an actionable innovation pill on Tuesday morning via these Explorer webinar to start high for the week. So let's start with a poll question today. Could you look into your polls and see whether it will work for me? You should be able to see a poll question. And today's question is, are you connected via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or 3G, 4G to attend this webinar? Can you respond to that? Most probably you might need to look into your polls tab. And just press yes or no. Wow, this is interesting. 100%. 100% of the people are connected via Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G. Now think about how many times we are connected to various Wi-Fis or other wireless networks on day-to-day basis. Do we know how secure these connections are? Today we have an Australian startup called Hackhunter with us. Hackhunter provides real-time visibility of Wi-Fi network environment. So today we welcome, I call them a power couple, but I should say maybe Wi-Fi couple, Tracy and Mike Thompson on our webinar. Tracy Thompson is the CEO of Hackhunter, a cybersecurity startup ensuring Wi-Fi is used for good, which is very important. With its innovative solution, Hackhunter helps organizations accurately detect, track, and locate the source of unauthorized and potentially malicious Wi-Fi in real time. We also have Mike Thompson, who is the CTO and co-founder of Hackhunter. Mike is an IoT expert with over 25 years of experience in information and cybersecurity. Attendees, please share your questions through the chat box in the meantime, or you can request to speak once we are open for questions. Tracy and Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us along today. It's a great opportunity for us to tell you a bit about Hackhunter and about what we're doing. So Hackhunter helps organizations to actually find unauthorized Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is used, throughout all organizations these days by all staff who are working and using their own devices. And it's also used for things like manufacturing, for machinery to speak to management and control systems, for example. So Wi-Fi is it's used absolutely everywhere, and it's the majority of internet traffic is actually via Wi-Fi. So what we're doing is we're helping organizations to find out what is actually within their Wi-Fi environment. So to make sure that there is nothing malicious or unauthorized there that can affect their operations. So, Mike, do you want to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the biggest challenges for for organisations is just dealing with the cybersecurity challenge, which is massive. And as Tracy said, Wi-Fi security is a critical part of that. Over 50%. So the key part of what we're all about is trying to make that task easier. Companies, things like PCI DSS, for example, and other requirements, commercial requirements, require people to actually check and make sure their Wi-Fi is secure. So if you take, for example, a major bank, for example, they have to do audits every 3 months, I think it is, Tracy.
Quarterly,
for Wi-Fi. And what they need to do is, the challenge for them is they need to actually identify every Wi-Fi device used in their organisation. They have to make sure every one of those devices is operating correctly, that it's being used for good, if you like. So just being able to have visibility where what's out there is actually quite difficult. And what we found is, through our trials, is that in one example for a financial institution we did a trial with, is that they found devices hidden under the floor. They found a potential state actor. And this is all within a 2-day period that we worked with them. And they found a device hidden in a gym bag that was remotely turned off when we approached it. And so, that was just 3 incidents I can think of in that 2-day period, walking through a couple of buildings. And we also looked at, hundreds of devices that were in use, and probably 50% of those were illegally being used, where we just had to talk to the people and say, hey, it's not okay to hotspot in the organisation and create another, if you like, rogue access point or network connection in that could potentially be abused. So there are lots of reasons why Wi-Fi is a potential issue. The other aspect too is just even for the average mum and dad, a lot of people don't realise that pretty much every router produced by the NBN, Telstra, Optus, whoever your provider is, they're all quite vulnerable to some serious Wi-Fi security flaws. And unfortunately, one of the flaws that is quite prevalent is a thing called a DAuth attack. And most corporates are pretty well protected from this, but the average home network is not. In fact, virtually every NBN router out there or Telstra Optus router out there is vulnerable, even though the vulnerability was patched back in 2009. So the router manufacturers themselves just don't seem to care too much about security. Cost is obviously the primary motivator. So as under COVID and a lot of people working from home, for example, we actually have quite a massive exposure out there. People don't realise how open those networks potentially are, depending on what protections they have in place. So it's quite a big challenge, and I think the focus for us at Hackhunter is just making that job easier to be able to understand, get visibility out of that network, and very importantly, detect and locate the source of that Wi-Fi. One of the things I think probably good to mention about our core technology is that while we're focusing on malicious Wi-Fi at the moment, we're very much we've built what we call the high-speed packet analysis engine on a chip. So we've basically got the ability to put a template on our devices and turn them into a detect and locate system for any Wi-Fi pattern that we want. So I could, for example, tell it to look for malicious Wi-Fi, which is the default. I can tell it to look for drones. I can tell it to look for people who've left the organisation their mobile phones. I can tell it to look for any Wi-Fi pattern I want. So they can be used in a number of different ways. In fact, one of the ways we're looking at working with the military is for IED detection. So, for example, you can imagine a soldier carrying one of our chips, even embedded in their clothing, and that will detect a Wi-Fi operated IED on the side of the road, and not only detect the IED, but also detect the person controlling that. So there's lots of potential uses for this, which is quite exciting.
So at the moment, we're launching into the market with what we call our Pursuit Tracker. So the tracker is a portable device, handheld device, lightweight, that actually it detects if there's any unauthorized Wi-Fi around, and it will tell you if it's malicious, and then it will let you actually track it down and physically locate it. And we can locate the device to within a few centimetres. So to give you some examples of some trials that we've done, as Mike alluded to before, we've done a trial with a large financial institution where we did a floor walk for them for their quarterly payment card industry data security standard, or PCI DSS compliance. And that's something that all financial institutions and merchants, or anyone who processes or stores payment card information, has to comply with. So we did what's called a floor walk, so an audit of the Wi-Fi network with them. And over that period of time, as Mike said, we found hundreds of devices that were being used illegally, and we found 3 that were potentially malicious, that had to be referred to their security department to investigate further. At the moment, we have a trial going on in the US with a defence prime, so a prime contractor to global defence organisations. And they've been using it in their environment, again, to look for unauthorised Wi-Fi. And the feedback that we've received from them, the trial is completing in the next day or so, but the feedback that we've got so far is that they're amazed at how quickly it can enumerate the network. So they're amazed at how quickly, once you turn it on, the tracker will show you all of the Wi-Fi that's in the environment. Then you can say, well, this one's safe because I know it's my router. And so you can put it onto the safe list. We have that facility as well. And then you can exclude the safe list, so it will only show you the access points that are not your authorised access points. And so that makes it much easier for you to decide which ones you want to investigate, and then you can track them down. And there's also a facility on the tracker for you to log details about the access point, and then also to look at all the devices that are attached to the access point, and then track those down as well. And it can also tell you about devices that are communicating through the access point. So they might not be Wi-Fi devices, but they're actually communicating through the access point with another Wi-Fi device. Have I got that right, Mike?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to think about it is any Wi-Fi device or anything talking to a Wi-Fi device can be picked up instantly by the device and tracked. So, for example, I can point the tracker at my next door neighbour. I wouldn't suggest people do this. And within about 30 seconds, I can find every device, Wi-Fi device, and devices talking to the Wi-Fi device in that house. So it'll tell me the manufacturer, the device ID, how often it talks to it, and I could then physically locate that. So I can tell you straight away what brand of speakers next door uses. I can tell you quite a lot about the neighbourhood, actually. Not that I suggest people use it for that, but certainly it's quite interesting to point the device in a particular direction and actually just see what's going on in the Wi-Fi world.
So Chris, I'm not sure how to get the video working. Are you able to put that on for us now?
Yes.
Just to give people an idea of how it actually works.
Sure. Let's try that.
Thanks for that, Chris.
Huh?
Yeah, so we're in Melbourne lockdown, so there were a few constraints that we had about trying to make a product video, so we decided to just have fun with it, given that we had to do it at home. So hope you enjoyed our fantastic acting there. But it does give you a good idea of how the device actually works and what it can be used for. Chris, would you like us to talk a bit about our background now, or is there anything else that...
Yeah, so given that, thank you very much. And that was very good, actually, the video. I really liked it. Maybe I want one of those devices to check if there is everything safe in my area, especially so many of us are working from home nowadays.
Yeah.
And the extension of corporates is so much in Wi-Fi. So I mean, I would be definitely interested in what's your story behind Hackhunter? How did you start this company, and why did you start this company?
Sure. Okay, so background. We previously had a security consulting and software company that we ran for 15 years with another co-founder. And so we concentrated on business continuity, so on the response side of security and also in security risk. And we had software that was a multi-award winning software. So in 2016, we sold the software side of the business. In 2017, we sold the business continuity consulting side, and our business partner went with that to the new owners. And then Mike and I took the security consulting part of the business and decided to look for the next thing to do. So we went out consulting for a year or so while we thought about what we wanted to do. And in the end, we thought that we'd try to find something that was the intersection of Mike's two huge interests, which are cybersecurity and IoT, or Internet of Things. And that's where Hackhunter comes from. So Mike, if you want to talk a bit about your background.
Yeah, so I've spent a long time in the industry. Sort of started out really in the early days doing sort of IT security operations. I was a CISO for an insurance company for quite a while, and had the fortune or misfortune of catching my first computer fraud case. And so that was an interesting experience. I then moved to a consulting company called SMS Consulting. Worked for them for about 8.5 years, and I ran their national security operations. So that gave me great exposure to the corporate world, and everywhere from government, private industry, small business to bigger business, and really understand how not just the risk management equation, but also a lot of the technology that's being used. I then did a lot of advisory roles for organisations. I volunteered for the Law Reform Commission, and I helped them with some of the security legislation, things like Workplace Privacy Act and things like that. Also, I was the technical advisor to the Privacy Commissioner in Victoria. Helped them on a lot of things like, believe it or not, teaching them about some technology, everything from DNA evidence and biometrics through to satellite surveillance systems. So that was a really interesting role, and gave us good exposure to some of the technologies out there. Then, as Tracy said, ran our own business for about 16 years, doing a lot of consulting work and software in around the security business continuity planning industry, and that was great. But really, I guess my passion's always been, as Tracy said, that sort of intersection between technology and the security area. So I've done a lot of home automation work, and I was just saying a little bit earlier there, I was just showing the electric blinds in the home going up and down, and that was a fun project. So I've always been interested in small microcontrollers and automation, and that whole IoT world, and really the security intersection with that was really a great opportunity. And I guess one of the key drivers that came out about this was really sort of curiosity driven. I could say I was reading some articles about people in apartment blocks who are being attacked by Wi-Fi. So it's actually quite common that you can get a neighbour who's not a very nice person who's causing disruption to your Wi-Fi network. It's quite easy to do with some very cheap devices you can buy from China. And this person was complaining on the chat board that, it was really annoying. They suspected somebody in the apartment block was doing it, but they didn't know who, and there was nothing they could do about it. They was basically bringing down their network every day when they needed it most. They had no easy way of actually finding who they were, so they could just go and knock on their door and say, please stop it. So that was kind of a really interesting challenge to me. I thought, well, there's got to be some way we can do that, and realizing there was really nothing on the market that could do that. So that started my curiosity looking into microcontrollers and see what their ability was to be able to do this as a portable handheld device. So I sort of basically worked through that problem, did a bit of a feasibility exercise, actually cracked the technology to be able to do the basics for that. And that was really a couple of years ago in the start of our startup journey in moving into Hackhunter.
Great. That's really good background. We have started getting some questions. And I could see Nathan said, feels like Ghostbusters. Your video was great. Liam said he loved it. So we have some questions coming from Gordon. First question, you mentioned the vulnerability of our home routers. Is there anything you recommend we can do first to check, and the second to ensure our security? Yeah,
absolutely. So one of probably the biggest vulnerability is what we call a denial of service or a deauth attack that can be done on a router. Now, the reason why hackers do this is twofold. So one is they can bring down your network. So while they're attacking it, you can't connect any Wi-Fi device. They can disconnect every Wi-Fi device in your house. So that's very, very concerning, number one. Number two is when they do that attack, what happens is every device tries to reconnect to your network. And when it does that, it sends out what's called a handshake packet, which is part of the authentication process. And in that process, you can capture what's called the hash of the password. And if hackers catch that, they can then go and brute force attack that and work out the password to your Wi-Fi system. And then they can, obviously do a lot more damage in terms of getting into the network. So in terms of how you protect a router from doing that, the number one thing you need to do is switch on what we call encrypted management frames. Unfortunately, virtually every home router doesn't have this ability. So you can't rely on that. The second part of what you can do is to make sure you just use a very strong password. So at least 12 characters long, and preferably combination of characters, numbers, special characters as well. But at least 12 characters long. Passphrase is a better way to do that. The reason for that is even if they capture your password, the chances of cracking it become very low. So that's probably the number one thing. Change the default. Everybody tends to have their Telstra or Optus, default password that came with the router. Yeah. The trouble is the password cracking tools that are designed to actually work with the default passwords that come with those routers. There are certain patterns in the way they do that. So you're much better off creating your own. So that's probably the first thing I would do. On top of that, the other thing is reduce the range of your router. So most people always want to make sure their Wi-Fi can go as long distance as possible. But the smart play for security is to make sure the Wi-Fi only goes far enough to cover the perimeter of your house. You don't want it to go any further. So you don't want it to be traveling, to your neighbour's place or into the car park or to the main highway. Having Wi-Fi can extend that far might be great if you want to sit in a deck chair at the end of your property and access Wi-Fi, but it also means bad guys can also access it from a distance as well. So you can limit the power of your Wi-Fi. Some routers allow you to do that, which is quite useful. But rather than go through, look, there's probably about 10 or 15 different things I'd recommend people do. And I think one of the things I can do for you guys is I can send you a top 10, top 15 list of things to do, and more than happy for you to distribute that to people who've attended the session. And they can read through that at their leisure. If they've got any questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Given that we got only 3 minutes left, but we got a couple of more questions. The next question is, do you have a use case for the education sector?
Sorry, which sector?
Education.
Education sector.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would say 100% because...
Yeah, for sure, especially on campus. All the students are using Wi-Fi to connect because they're all moving around, and there's a lot of IP there. So yes, for sure, and because there's so many people moving in and out as well, it's very easy. It would be very easy for anyone to infiltrate the area. So yes, we believe that for higher education in particular, tertiary in particular, yes, this is a very strong use case for it.
Great. And the next one is from Suren saying that how does this fit in with free Wi-Fi being provided by councils, for example, Melbourne City, I know in Canberra, same.
Yeah.
Are the free Wi-Fi not safe?
No.
No, not really. So there's a couple of things that are problems. So when you're in an open Wi-Fi network, there are no passwords encrypting the information. So what that means is every single thing you do over that connection is technically unencrypted, unless you're connecting to an encrypted service over HTTPS, so an encrypted website. But most people don't realize that not everything is HTTPS encrypted. So for example, even in an office, people will say, hey, look, I'm only connecting to secure websites, so nobody can see the traffic. But what they don't realize is they'll send a document to the printer, and the printer isn't HTTPS. So I can sit there and I can capture all the traffic, and I can see every document sent to your printer. So, it's not quite as simple as saying that. So open networks are intrinsically a problem. So you really need to build a layer over the top of that, where you either have a VPN, for example, or you make sure you only deal with encrypted end services.
Yeah, don't do your banking.
Okay.
Definitely don't recommend it. There's an old saying in the Wi-Fi community. Basically it's you can get a free lobster lunch with Wi-Fi, and basically what that means is you hang around a hotel, and often they use open networks, and you just simply sniff the network and find out all the room numbers of the people in the organisation, and then once you have a name and a room number, you can go down and order a lobster lunch. So quite an easy thing to do.
Not that we don't do any of that. Okay.
We will definitely check that next time. The next question is, are you looking for further funding to develop the product through EarlyBirds, or are you looking for customers?
Yeah, both. Mostly customers. We have just done a pre-seed round, so we have some investors on board.
Yeah.
And we're we're okay for the next 6 months or so. Of course, funding always helps with a startup because it means you can go faster. Yeah. But yes, definitely we're looking for customers at the moment.
Okay, great. And the next question from Nathan, where was the hardware manufactured, developed?
Right here.
Yeah. So we all our casings are all 3D printed, and we've actually built a printer farm here, and we have scalable technology, so we can actually very quickly scale that farm to anything we want to. From at the moment, we can produce on the scale probably about 8 units a day just on our printer farm here, and we can scale that to thousands per week if we want to, just by sending out the 3D printing files to required organisations. So we actually plan to build up our own printer farm to cope with demand. Yeah. But we can scale that very quickly. Within 2 weeks, we can add printers and start producing additional units if we need to.
Great. The next question is from Liam. Do you have the capability to gather analytics data to improve the product or service?
Yeah, there's an entire analytics back end which we haven't really spoken about. So as the tracker. As you use the tracker, there you can log directly to an SD card that's on there and then upload the logs, and then we produce reports for you. And we also have other sensors which interface directly. So in real time, they detect what's happening with your Wi-Fi, and they send that information straight through to your security management systems. And then there's also a dashboard and reporting attached to that as well. So the aim is eventually for us to be able to gather the data and then use that to predict behaviour and Wi-Fi, danger spots, if that makes sense, globally. So that's our end game. That's where we want to get to eventually.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Tracy and Mike, for your time today. And it's really nice talking to you. And I'm sure that people will contact you through either through EarlyBirds or directly. So we really appreciate your time and all the best. And I'm sure that we will surely meet soon, especially around federal government in Canberra. and we are open for business. And I'm sure that Victoria will open soon, and we will see each other again very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.